seems to me that in order to cast anything, whether it's a vision or a fly fishing line, you have to have something pretty solid under your feet. You got to know where you stand in order to aim right, right? Today we stand at the brink of a big decision as a congregation, one that involves meeting the needs of today, but also takes a big leap of faith toward our vision for our future. I'm talking about the special congregational meeting happening this afternoon at 2 o'clock, in which we'll vote on whether to move forward with a capital campaign to build toward our master plan of a bigger campus. And one of the places we stand is on the shoulders of Felix Arnold. Felix Arnold. He was a high school principal in Grants, New Mexico, when he got it in his mind that people in the Albuquerque area should have a liberal religious option. Grants, New Mexico, carrot capital of the United States. This was the year before Patty Martinez discovered uranium there. It probably wasn't a very metropolitan place, and I wonder if our liberal-minded principal was feeling a wee bit isolated there in the nation's carrot capital. In May 1949, Arnold put an ad in the Albuquerque papers inviting anyone who was interested to meet with him at the YWCA. Our records indicate that he contacted the Boston office, which probably means the American Unitarian Association at 25 Beacon Street in Boston Common. And he found someone who could come and speak with the group, the Reverend Francis Ricker. Let me say that again. Felix Arnold had the idea that there should be a liberal religious group in Albuquerque. He placed an ad in the paper, and with nothing more than that, nothing more than an idea and an ad that he cast out into the community to see who might bite, he got the Boston office to arrange for a minister to come and talk to them. Who the them was, Arnold did not know. He hoped somebody would show up at the meeting. The night came to meet at the YWCA. There it is. Felix Arnold and Francis Ricker waited to see who, if anyone, would turn up. I imagine Arnold must have been a little anxious. Had he jumped the gun by inviting Ricker so soon? It didn't matter. When it was time to begin, 30 people had arrived. 30. In the Bible, the Gospel of Matthew tells a story about how Jesus recruited his first disciples. Passing by 2 fishermen casting a net into the sea, Jesus calls out to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That's the King James Version. I'll teach you to cast a vision with which to gather up people, he is saying. Now, I'm not going to compare Arnold to Jesus. If he's like the majority of other UUs from that era who had grown up on a steady diet of Jesus and were looking for spiritual bread that was more palatable, he might bristle at that comparison. But he did cast a net of sorts. He cast a net with the vision of a liberal religious faith, and he gathered up other seekers. As a testament to the gospel of liberal religion, the good news of liberal religion, and to this group's talent for turning a vision into a mission and then living it out, within 16 years they grew from a tiny fellowship to an official church with 500 members. 500 members in 16 years. And like those fishermen in the story, Arnold gave up his livelihood to take this path. Not because he wanted to, but because the officials in Grants, who, by the way, probably called themselves followers of Jesus, heard what Arnold was up to, deemed him a heretic, and fired him. He had to go to work selling encyclopedias to get by while getting our church off the ground. I like to imagine him pitching his heretical ideas, as well as his books, to Albuquerque's subversive 1950s housewives as he went around the city door to door. From the YWCA meeting, a group formed that began to meet regularly at a member's home. Later, Temple Albert generously hosted them. That's what Temple Albert looked like. When that was sold, the group moved to another space, the USO building, where they discovered that it does not work for a church to be located above a bowling alley, next door to a jukebox and in front of railroad tracks. Live and learn. They had to get out of there. So a short time later, they bought a small lot on San Mateo and Central for $1,600. Those were the days, weren't they? I'm shopping for a home right now, and I'll bet the bank fees alone exceed $1,600. Their lot was small, though, 100 by 100 feet. And then an unexpected opportunity came their way. It was the summer of 1955, and many members were away on vacation when 4.5 acres on the corner of Carlisle and Comanche became available. The cost, $15,000, and they had to act fast if they were going to get it. The few members present stepped out on faith and went for it. One member, taking the risk upon his or herself, put up the necessary cash and took out a mortgage that the church could pay back later. The decision to buy this land that we sit on now was a very controversial one, you can imagine. Some members were afraid it was too far out in the middle of nowhere for anyone to come. It's hard to imagine now, isn't it? I've been told a few members even left the group over it. And if you look at a picture of the land after they built on it, you can see why they were worried. It was just out in the middle of the desert. Here's what the parking lot looked like. Think about it. In 1958, the average income was $4,500 a year. Minimum wage was $1 per hour. And this small group of people found the resources and the courage to buy this land and build that campus. For a while, they met in what is now our social hall, and then they were squeezed out by a growing religious education program. So they built this sanctuary to accommodate their growth and to create the space to live out their mission in the future, and it's served us well. Here's a picture of the architectural model with the architect, Harvey Hoschauer, the minister, James Wilkes, and William Parrish, chair of the building committee at that time. Now you know why we have the Parrish Library. It isn't the reason you thought. It's named after somebody. I have Louise Pembroke to thank for this information. She was a charter member and was part of this congregation for 54 years. Her name is the first one in the memorial book we began in 2004. And I drew these notes from her typed history of the congregation, which you can find anytime you'd like in a collection of photo albums in the office. I wonder, is there anybody here today who was a member back in the days when these photos were taken? No. I talked with Jane Henley the other day, and she was here in 1965. She remembers the day the mural was installed. I think we have some other members whose membership may date back that far as well. And we thank them for being part of that community that ministered to each other and dreamed that we might be able to do the same. That's the beginning of our story, or at least it's one beginning. Next week, I'll preach on what Unitarian Universalism is, and I'll tell some of the story that became the larger context in which our congregation first gathered, the macro story. Right now, I want to look at the micro. That's us. Right here, First Unitarian, 2011. Micro is probably the wrong word. We've got 774 members. A net gain of 250 people or so since 1965 is nice, but it may seem modest unless you consider two things. First, our denomination as a whole has experienced a decline in membership in the same time period, along with just about all of the mainline Protestant religions. And second, our increase in membership all happened in the last 10 years. That's a net gain in membership of 50% in 10 years. 500 was already a large congregation by UU standards, and now we're among the top 20 largest congregations in our denomination. When I visited this congregation for the first time last spring, I came incognito. I was not yet the final candidate for this position, but Christine Robinson, our senior minister, said, "This church is a large enough one that nobody will pay any attention to you." Well, I was personally welcomed dozens of times that morning by ushers and welcome table people, by the people I sat next to, and again when Christine asked us to turn to our neighbors. There was more greeting and welcoming at coffee hour, and then I stayed through 2 more services and experienced it all again and again. I felt noticed. That was my first glimpse of a congregation that is warm and hardworking and passionate. When I came out as the final candidate, about 8 people from social justice met with me for breakfast. They told me about countless programs and focus areas: after-school tutoring, ESL, Change for the Future, the UU Service Committee and Guest at Your Table, the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, immigration, animal advocates, EarthWeb, the food pantry, and I see them scattered throughout the congregation this morning. They're here now. And then there were the groups who met for community or friendship or art. The Friday painters, extended families, covenant groups, the young adults group, the men's group, the Wednesday potluck. All of these are expressions of this congregation. And this congregation is an expression of its mission, a mission to create and nurture a liberal religious home in Albuquerque, a UU home. In a country in which seemingly unbounded capitalism is making a commodity of everything and everyone, we bless people. In a time when individualism is in and duty and commitment are suspect, we make covenants and celebrate marriages, whether they are legally recognized or not. In a world with so much violence, with such gaps between rich and poor, in which we are urged to buy more and lose weight and fight aging, and in which we are told we'll go to hell if we don't love the right person or follow the right rules or worship the right God, in a world that can be crazy, judgmental, and hostile, we ask you to believe, we insist that you believe that you are beautiful and holy just the way you are. You are beautiful and holy just the way you are. And so the people come. They come, and their presence makes this a living church. Here's the thing about living churches, in the words of a recent newsletter from the UUA. Living churches always have a parking problem. Dying churches don't. Living churches are constantly changing their methods. Dying churches don't have to. Living churches have lots of noisy kids. Dying churches are quiet. Living churches grow so fast, you forget people's names. In dying churches, you've known everyone's names for years. Living churches live with change and risk. They respond thoughtfully, but boldly, with courage. Their members are challenged to do big things. And so we find ourselves poised at the brink of a big decision, to build or not to build. I'm imagining what it would be like to step onto our campus in the year 2021, 10 years from now. Imagine with me for a moment that we've built out our whole master plan. It's okay if you can't remember what the master plan looks like. I'll walk you through it, and we'll peer through the windows together and see what's happening. We'll cast a vision based on your dreams that you've shared with me and based on mine. So imagine riding in a car traveling south on Carlisle from Montano. As you wait at the light next to News Channel 7, there it is in front of you, First Unitarian's sanctuary. No longer hidden in the middle of campus, the sanctuary sits boldly on the corner of Carlisle and Comanche, announcing the presence of a liberal church to all of Albuquerque. The xeriscaping and habitat blooming around it have beautified the corner. And instead of telling visitors to make a right at the news station, people in the local neighborhoods, when they give directions to their guests, tell them to turn right at the Unitarian Church. As you walk through the parking lot toward the sanctuary, you notice reserved spaces right near the door. Some are for people with disabilities, and some say, "Welcome, new guests." In one spot, there's a van with the words First Unitarian on it and a bumper sticker that says biodiesel. It's used for group trips and to offer rides to people who otherwise could not get to church. Inside the sanctuary are high windows revealing a glimpse of New Mexico's dramatic sky, and low windows revealing our habitat's native grasses, flowers, and trees. There's an art exhibit on the walls, and our beautiful mural, raised a little higher than it used to be so you can see the whole thing, forms the backdrop for a 50-person choir whose voices fill the entire room and transport you instantly. You have stepped into sacred space, and all around you, adults and children who start worship together each week are having the same experience. From the back of the sanctuary, iMinistry catches it all. They have new equipment, and the sanctuary has been designed to maximize the quality of our recordings to the delight of our branches, which have been growing and growing all on their own too. Even the sound of our gospel choir and children's choirs can be captured beautifully. Music, which was already pretty great in 2011, has taken worship to a whole new level in 2021. It's a priority in our budget. Next door to the sanctuary is a little chapel, which has its own entrance. During the first service, adult Sunday school classes meet there to explore spiritual practices. At other times of the morning, people enter the chapel to pray, meditate, light candles, or just rest. There are readings and a bowl of prayer cards next to the door. For many people, the chapel is a part of their spiritual practice. Each week, there's an evening Vespers service there. First, everyone gathers for a potluck in the social hall. Some members volunteer at a homework help table for kids, while parents take a night off from cooking and visit with good friends. Afterward, in the chapel, there's guitar music, singing, and readings. The people light candles and give thanks. Across the courtyard, a book group meets. A class on forgiveness begins, and a covenant group gathers. We have enough meeting space to do it all. At these small gatherings, bonds are formed between people. There's hugging and laughter as they leave for home. On Sunday mornings, coffee hour flows more smoothly in the larger space, and there's room for a bookstore and a gift shop. Christine's latest book, maybe her 10th or 15th by then, is prominently displayed along with sweatshirts, bumper stickers, and coffee mugs, and all the proceeds go to create scholarships to send our youth on life-changing missions. Above the social justice table, the wall is covered in photographs of church members engaged in various activities, building habitat homes, making field trips to the border, testifying at the Roundhouse, volunteering in schools, distributing food from our food pantry, providing humanitarian relief in disaster areas, volunteering at an animal shelter. With 1,000 members and a social justice director, there are too many photos to count. There's a newspaper article on the wall, too, with a headline that says, "Local congregation is transforming city." It tells about a program we started to pair new and potential business owners in economically depressed parts of town, many of whom are members, with more experienced mentors from the congregation. Accountants, lawyers, leadership consultants, grant writers, and marketing specialists volunteer their time and expertise, and the resulting success stories have started to trigger the economic revitalization of Albuquerque neighborhoods that were once forgotten. Areas where there used to be liquor stores, convenience stores, and dilapidated homes are now thriving. We've made new friends all over town, and just as we've helped to change those neighborhoods, they've changed us, adding new faces, voices, and experiences to the congregation. It's become a church like a welcome table, like the one the children made, where everyone is welcome and that reaches beyond itself, even to the ones who aren't there. Meanwhile, First Unitarian hosts conferences. We have ample space, convertible space, and even showers for overnight guests. There are offices for all of our staff members, and even one for the intern. We have a minister of pastoral care to provide better outreach to members who are sick or in crisis or have a new baby. The Wesson and Arnold building has been replaced by beautiful, flexible classroom space, and all of this serves the purpose of inviting as many people as possible into this liberal religious community and of living out a faith that is not limited to Sunday morning worship, but that changes lives. Can you imagine it? Yes. Thank you, Jane. In 1965, the year our plucky founders bought this land in the middle of nowhere, Alexei Leonov performed the first Soviet spacewalk. Later, he gave an account of it. He said, "At last, everything was ready, and I could emerge. I stuck my head out of the exit hatch. The boundless expanses of outer space unfolded before me in their indescribable beauty. I took my first look at the earth. It sailed majestically before my eyes. I saw bright clouds, the azure of the Black Sea, the fringe of the coastline. The moment came to leave the ship and step out into space, the moment for which we had prepared for so long, of which we had thought so much. Unhurriedly, I climbed out of the hatch, pushed myself gently away from it, moving further and further from the ship. A view of our wonderful spacecraft slowly unfolded before my eyes. I stretched out my arms and legs and soared." At one point, he pulls a little too hard on the lifeline that connects him to the ship, which is weightless out there, and it starts barreling toward him. Frightened, he discovers he's able to stop it just by lifting up his hands. His reality has changed. It's scary, but he finds his way. He figures it out. In your mind's eye, step away from this ship, this church building, and look at it as though from the sky. A God's eye view, our theists might say. See its place in the city, its place in your life, its place in time. What would it be like to embrace the moment for which we have prepared for so long? To push away from our too small, safe space and soar. I'll see you here at 2.